Now in this section, you will start learning Laravel by building a simple blog. On the home page, you'll see a list of posts. Each item contains a title, post excerpt, author name, post date, and post tags. When I click on the post title, it'll take me to the details of the post. I can also see the author's posts or see the posts by tag. Okay, let's get started. Alright, here I have a fresh Laravel project called blog. If you haven't created it yet, you may use this command, Laravel new blog. Once created, you can see the end of the project. Then open it in your favorite code editor or IDE. In my case, I'll open it in Visual Studio Code Editor. Here, in VS Code, I can open the integrated terminal, then start up the Laravel built-in server by using this command. Once it's running, let's switch over to our browser, then enter localhost :8000. And here we see the Laravel default welcome page displayed on the screen. Now, at the time I'm recording this video, I use Laravel version 10.19. This version, as well as the welcome page, may be different from yours, but that should be fine. Okay, let's switch back over to our editor. Then go to the routes folder. So this is a place to put your application routes. Let's open the web.php, since we want to define some routes that are accessible on the web. As you can see, it contains a default route that returns Laravel welcome page. If we change the return value with a string like this, here in the browser, we'll see the message. Alright, instead of returning a string, let's return a view as before. However, we won't return the welcome page. Instead, we'll return a view, post.index. Laravel templating engine will assume it is a view called index_blade_php inside the posts folder. Since we haven't created it yet, if we go to the browser, we'll see this error. So, let's now go to the Resources, Views folder. Here, we'll find the welcome blade.php, which is the welcome page we saw earlier. Let's create a new folder, Posts. Inside that, let's create a new file, index.blade.php. Inside this file, let's add an HTML5 boilerplate. In VS Code, we can simply type an exclamation, and then hit Tab or Enter key. Inside the body, let's add a heading 1, and show a message. Then, below that, let's add a UL element that contains two items. Post 1 and post 2. Okay, since we now have the view, now we no longer see the previous error. Instead, we see a heading and two list items. Alright, let's head back over to our editor. Go to the web.php, then define another route. Here, we can simply duplicate this existing route, then change the route path to posts and a post parameter. So, this part would be dynamic, and we need to capture the value in this closure. Inside the route, we'll return a view, posts.show. We'll also want to pass the post from the route parameter to our view. We can do that by passing an array in the second argument of the view function like this. Now, let's use this route in the index view. Here, I'll change the first anchor to posts 1 and another one, posts 2. Now, if we switch back over to our browser, refresh the page, then hit a certain link, here we got this error. ViewPosts.show not found. To fix it, let's go back to our editor. Navigate to the Resources, Views, Posts folder. Then create a new file, show.blade.php. Inside the file, let's add an HTML5 boilerplate. Then add a heading 1 inside the body, and then show the post variable. Let's have a look. Now we no longer see the error, and we'll see the post ID that is taken from the route parameter. Okay, that's it. I'll see you in the next video. In the last video, we defined a couple of routes and created a view to display a list of posts and a view to show a detail of a certain post. In this video, we'll make the posts dynamic, because currently all of that are just static text. The common approach is to use a database, but for now, we'll be using files. Alright, let's go to the storage folder, and then app folder. There, let's create a new folder, posts. Inside the folder, I'll create 2 markdown files. The file name will start with a date, followed by a period, followed by the post slug. Don't forget to add the markdown file extension. Inside the file, I'll add a heading, and random content. Okay, let me create another one. I'll duplicate this file, then adjust the file name. I'll also adjust the file content. Now, to make our life much easier, we'll be using the Sheets package from Spady, which makes it easy to store, retrieve, and index content stored as text files. So, let's go to the package repository. Then find the installation command. Let's copy the command. Open our terminal, paste the code, and then hit enter. Back to here. Then let's copy this command. And basically, we'll copy the sheet configuration to our application config. Back to the terminal. Paste the code, and then hit enter. OK, let's now go to the config folder. As the name suggests, this folder holds all configurations of our application. For now, let's open the sheet.php, which is the configuration for the sheet package. Here, let's uncomment these lines. Then, let's keep the disk's value to posts. Change the sheet class to app, models, post. The model currently doesn't exist, but we'll create it shortly. For the extension, since we'll be using a markdown file, let's change it to MD. Here, we set the disk to posts. So, let's define it in the file system configuration. Here we can simply duplicate the local disk. Change the disk name to posts, as we defined here. And then adjust the root path to the folder we created earlier. Storage path, app, post. OK, let's now go to the app folder. Then go to the models folder. Then create the post model. Inside the file, let's add a model namespace, app models. Then define the post model, which extends the sheet package. Let's pull in the sheet namespace. All right, let's now go to our routes. Here, in the root route, let's call the seats facade. From Spady, sheets, facade. Then call the collection method. Specify the posts collection. And then call the all method. And for now, let's see it by wrapping it in the Laravel DD helper function. Let's give it a save and have a look. As you can see, I got a collection which contains 2 items. Now, let's assign this collection instance in a variable. In my case, posts. Then, let's pass it to the posts index view. OK, let's open up the posts index view. Here, let's leave one list item. Then loop through the posts, using the blade for each directive. Posts as post. Let's move the list item inside the for each. Then, let's replace the number with the post slug. For the text, we'll replace it with the post slug. Later, we'll come back here and replace it with the post title. But for now, since we don't have the title attribute yet, we'll use the slug attribute. Let's also wrap this UL element in the blade if statement. So, we'll only show it if the post collection is not empty. Let's give it a save. And have a look. Okay, now we see the slug of the post displayed on the screen. Let's move on to the next video and see how to add additional information to the post, such as title, author, and post excerpt. Alright, let's add additional information to our blog posts. Since we store our posts in static files, in this case in Markdown files, a common approach is to add some metadata to our Markdown files. The metadata that is added to the Markdown file is written in YAML format, but it is commonly known as front matter. The metadata can be anything you want, but for now we'll be adding a title, author, and excerpt. Alright, at the top of the file, let's add a triple dash. Let's duplicate this line. Then, in between, let's add a title, colon, and then specify the title of the post. In my case, it's going to be my first post. Then, let's add the author, and then specify the author's name. Then, let's add an excerpt. I'll switch to my browser, then open Libsyn.com. Here, I'll generate a paragraph. And I'll uncheck this checkbox, then hit the button. Let me copy the paragraph. I'll prefix it with my first post, and then paste the paragraph. Back to the browser, go to the previous page. And now I'll generate 5 paragraphs. Let me copy the generated paragraphs, and then paste it as the post content. Okay, let me select everything. Copy. Open another Markdown file, and then replace the whole contents. Then I'll adjust the title to my second post. I'll add it to the contents. Let me also do it in another file. Now, since we have Markdown files with the front matter, let's change the content parser in the sheet configuration file. Let's open it, and then change it to Markdown with the front matter parser. Okay, let's go to our routes. And for now, let's die and dump the posts collection. Let's have a look. Okay, now we see the title, author, and excerpt added to each post. With that, let's remove the ddhelper function call. Then show the additional information to the post's index view. Let's add the post excerpt. And then the post date as well as the post author. Now, for the date, it's a Carbon instance, so we can use any methods that Carbon provides. In my case, I'll use the diff for humans method. And then add the post author. Let's have a look. Okay. Here we see the post title, post excerpt, post date, and post author. Let's now show the same information on the post detail page. Back to our route declaration. Here in this route, we can get the post by the given slug like this. So, let's take all items from the posts collection. After that, we can call the where method and specify the key, in this case slug, and then the value that is taken from the route parameter. Here, let's replace the post parameter with slug, pass it here, and then call the first method. For now, let's die and dump the post variable. Let's see it in our browser. As you can see, we get a post instance that contains some information that we may display on the screen. So, let's get rid of this line. Then, to make sure that the post is not null, we'll use Laravel abortive function. Pass a Boolean value in the first argument. In this case, we check if the post is null. Then, in the second argument, we specify the error code, in this case 404. Last, let's open up the post show view. There, we show the post title, post date, and author. Actually, let's grab it from the index view. Let's copy this and paste it here. Then, let's show the post contents. Let's have a look. Okay, now we see the page display the proper information of the post. If we try to change an invalid slug, here we got a 404 error page. Thanks to the Laravel abortive function, we just added in our route declaration. Okay, that's it. I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll style our blog with Tailwind CSS. Alright, let's go to the Tailwind CSS official website. Then, let's find the Tailwind installation guide with Laravel. Here, we'll be using Vite, which is the build tool that is commonly used today. Since we already installed the Laravel project, let's skip this step. Here, let's install Tailwind CSS by copying this command. Back to our project. Open our terminal, paste the command, and then hit enter. Let's copy this line. It basically generates a Tailwind configuration file and a post CSS configuration file. And the next thing that we need to do is to configure the template paths. Since we'll be working with only the blade template, let's copy just this line. Back to our project. Open the Tailwind configuration file. And then paste the path inside the content array. Okay, back to the browser. And the next thing that we need to do is to add the Tailwind directives to our project. In this case, they should be added to the resources CSS app.css. Back to our project. Open the app.css. And then paste the codes. Alright, let's give it a save. And now, let's open a new terminal and start our build process by running npm run dev. So now, we need to open two terminal windows. One for running the Laravel built-in server, and another one for running the Vite build process. Okay, with that, we can now use Tailwind CSS in our project. Let's simply copy this boilerplate. Back to our project. Go to the views. And then create a new file. I call it app.blade.php. Inside the file, I'll paste the code. Now, let me go to the web.php. And then define a test route for the app view I just created. Here I'll define a route view, since I won't need any logic for it. It's going to be test. and the view that will be loaded is the app view. Okay, I'll go to my browser and enter the test route. Here I see a heading with some styles applied. Now, let's wrap the heading with a div element. Then add some Tailwind classes. In my case, container, then mxauto, and then padding Y10. For the heading, I'll remove the underlying class. I think it's not necessary. Okay, now it looks much better. The next thing that I'll do is style the font family. You may go to Google Font and find any font that you like. For simplicity, I'll grab the font from the Welcome view. Let me copy these lines. Back to the app view, and then paste the code here. Now, to use the font in Tailwind CSS, let's reopen the Tailwind configuration file. First, let's import the default theme from Tailwind CSS default theme. Then, let's go to the theme option and then extend option. Inside the extend option, let's specify the font family. Inside it, we override the sans font family with our desired font. In my case, it's going to be Figtree. And we'll merge it with the existing sans font family in the default theme. Okay, let's give it a save. And have a look. Now we see the font has changed. Last, let's switch back to Tailwind's official guide. Then find typography. So, as noted here, beautify typographic defaults for HTML you don't control. When you install this plugin, you will access to a set of pros classes you can use to add beautiful typographic defaults to any vanilla HTML you don't control, like HTML rendered from Markdown or pull from a CMS. Alright, let's copy the installation command. Back to our terminal. Paste the code, and then hit enter. Next, we need to add the plugin in the Plugins option of the Tailwind configuration file. Now, we can use the pros classes to add sensible typography styles to any vanilla HTML. So, let me copy this markup. Go to the app view, and then paste it here. Let's give it a save, and have a look. As you can see, we have beautiful typography. If I remove the classes, the text looks a bit messy. Okay, let me undo the last change, and then remove the heading. Alright, let's move on to the next video, and see how to create a layout for our application. In this video, we'll make a layout for our application. Now, in Laravel, there are two common approaches to creating layouts: using template inheritance and using components. For now, we'll be using the template inheritance. We'll see how to use the component in the upcoming video. Okay, let's go to the Resources, Views folder. Here you may keep the file name as it is. But for me, it would make sense to name it App Layout. So, I'll rename it to App Layout. Inside this file, let's replace the main content with a placeholder using the blade yield directive. And I'll call it content. Let's also change this heading to my personal blog, or any name you like. Now, let's open up the Posts Index view. Then, let's remove the common part that is already defined in our layout. Next, let's extend the view from the parent template. Here we use the blade extends directive. And then specify the parent template, App Layout. Next, let's add a blade section directive, and then define the placeholder name, in this case content. Then, let's move the content inside the section. Let's have a look. Okay, now we see the styles applied to the list of posts. Let's now add extra styles to make this list look much better. Let's add the class attribute to the UL element. Let's add margin top 10. Then add a space in the y-axis of each child element. Okay, now we see a space between the list item. Let's now add a space to the post title, excerpt, and post meta. We'll also apply the prose class to make the typography looks better. And let's align the text to justify. Okay, we see extra space between post title, post excerpt, and post meta. And the typography is now much better. However, it does not have a full width. With the prose applied, Tailwind keeps the content as readable as possible. We can make the content fill the width of its container by adding the max width none. Okay, now the content fills the width of its container. Here, I don't want to apply the pros class to the heading element, so I'll add not pros. And for the post meta, I'll make it a bit small by adding text SM class. Okay. Let's now add some styles to the anchor element. Hover, text indigo 700. Then transition colors. And then duration 100. Actually, I need to show the post title instead of the post slug. Okay, now it looks much better. Let's now do a similar way to the show view. Let's open the file. Extends this view from the app layout. Add a section content. Then close it with the end section. Then let's wrap these elements with a div. Then add some classes. Margin top 10. And space Y5, or space 5 in the Y-axis to each item inside the div. Let's also add the pros class and max width none. For the heading, I'll remove the pros class. And for the post meta, I'll add text SM. Okay, it now looks much better. Let's move on to the next video and see how to use Blade components. In this video, we'll refactor our application layout with the Blade component. First, let's go to the Views folder, then create a new folder called Components. Once created, let's move our layout to the folder. Then, let's replace the Blade yield directive with $slot. Now, let's reopen the Posts index view. Then replace the extends directive as well as the section opening directive with the XApp layout. So, every blade component is prefixed with an X dash. Then, let's replace the blade section closing directive with the X layout closing tag. Let's have a look. Here we get the same result. Okay, let's do a similar way to the post show view. Let's replace the extends as well as the section opening directive with XApp layout. And then replace the end section with the XApp layout closing tag. Okay, our app is still working as before. In this video, we'll display the author's posts. Alright, let's first add additional author information to our Markdown files, which is going to use to generate the author URL. Let's open the Markdown file. And let's rename the author to author name. After that, we add author, and it's going to be a slug form of the author. Let me copy these lines. Then open another file. Replace this line, and I'll change the author's name. With this change, let's open up the Posts Index view. Then replace the author with the author name. Next, let's wrap the author's name with an anchor element. Then point the href attribute to authors. Post author. Let's grab the anchor styles from here. I'll add additional classes. Okay, let's now define the author's route. Let's remove this route declaration since we don't need it anymore. Then define the author's route. For now, let's die and dump the author variable. Give it a save. Back to our browser. Then hit the author link. Here we see the selected author on the screen. Let's now display the posts of the author. Let's switch back over to the root route declaration. Then copy this line. Back to the author route. Paste the code. To get only the posts that match the selected tag, let's call the filter method. There, we pass a closure that matches the post author, with the author grabbed from the route parameter. For now, let's die and dump the posts variable. As you can see, I get a collection instance. And if we take a look at the author attribute, it matches with the selected author. Okay, back to our route. Then return a view. Authors.show. Let's pass the posts variable to the view. Let's also pass in the selected author's name. We can do that like this. Let's take the first post. And then call the author name attribute. Next, let's navigate to the Views folder. Then create a new one, Authors. Let's copy the index view from the Posts folder. And then rename it to show.blade.php. Then, above the UL element, let's add a heading. Let's give it some classes. Margin top 10, text 3XL, and then font semi-bold. And it's going to be latest post by author's name. Let's have a look. Okay, here I got a post on the screen. Back to the previous page. And click another author's name. Okay, great. Let's see the post details. And now, let's fix the author's name. Let's copy the post meta markup. However, instead of pasting it in the show view, let's make it into a dedicated component. So let's go to the Components folder. Then create a new file, postmeta.blade.php. Inside the file, just paste the previous code. Back to here. Then replace the post meta with xPostMeta. And then pass the post variable to the component like this. I'll copy this line, and then go to the index view. Then replace this line. Then, let's go to the show view, and then replace this line with the post meta component calling like this. Okay, now we see the proper author name on the Show Post page. And we can also hit the author's name to see the posts. Last, let me put this post item into another component. I'll copy it. Go to the Components folder. Create a new file. Post item .blade.php. And then paste the previous code. Back to here. Then replace these lines with xPost item. And then pass the post variable to the component. Let me see if it's still working. Okay, it's still working just fine. Let's do the same thing to the author show view. Okay, everything is working just fine. In the last video, we saw how to display the author's posts. Now, in this video, we'll see how to tag our blog posts. I think it would be much easier since we'll follow almost the same steps. Alright, let's first add to our Markdown files a couple of tags. Here I'll add a tags attribute. And then specify the tags in an array like this. I'll open another Markdown file. And then specify the tags. Now, I'll place the post tags on the right side of the post meta. So, I'll open the post meta blade file. Then, add another div element. Inside that, let's loop over the post tags, using the blade for each loop. Inside it, let's add an anchor element, and show the tag. For the href, let's point it to the tag route, which currently does not exist yet. And let's wrap the div. With the blade if statement, to make sure that we don't have an empty div when there's no tag. Let's have a look. Okay, here we see the tags on the screen. Now let's make the tags pretty. Let's wrap both div elements with another div. Then add a couple of classes. Flex, item center, and then justify between. So, this basically put the post date and author on the left, and the post tags on the right side. Okay, let's now add some classes to this div element. Flex, flex row, item center, and space x2. Next, let's wrap the tag with a span element. There, we'll add some Tailwind classes. BG Indigo 500, text white, capitalize, inline flex, item center, padding in x-axis 3, padding in the y-axis 0.5. Let's make it rounded. Change the text size. Font semi-bold. And leading 5. Let's have a look. Okay, now the post tags look prettier. Let's now add some hover effect to the tag. Let's add to the anchor element. Class attribute. Hover opacity 75. Transition opacity. Duration 100. And then ease in. If we hover over a tag, we see the opacity transitions. If we look at the post's index, we have the same styles. Now, if we hit a certain tag, we'll get a 404 error page since we haven't defined the route yet. Alright, let's go to our routes. Then define the tag route. Here, let's simply copy this route declaration. Now, for the closure inside the filter method, let's replace it with PHP and array function. Then check if the tag that is taken from the route parameter is found in the post tags. Next, let's adjust the view path. In this case, it's going to be tags.show. Then, instead of passing the author's name, we'll be passing in the tag. Alright, let's now navigate to the Views folder. Then duplicate the author folder. Let's rename it to Tags. Let's now open the Show view inside it. Then change the heading text to Tagged and display the selected tag. Let's have a look. Here we see the posts are tagged in Laravel. If I now select the View tag, it's now tagged in View. And now the post is tagged in Livewire. Great. Alright, before I finish this video, I'll put this for each loop into a new component. So, I'll cut these codes. Then, I'll go to the Components folder, create a new file, and call it postitems.blade.php. Inside the file, I'll paste the previous codes. Back to the Show view. And now I can call the component xPostItems, and then pass the posts variable to the component. Let me see. Okay, it's still working as before. With that, I'll do a similar way to other files. Okay, so far so good. Now, if you feel that the font size is too small, you can make it a bit bigger. Since we use the Pros class, here we can use the Pros LG class. You can do the same thing to the Post Show view. As you can see, now the font size is increasing. Last, I'll change this text with the application name. I'll go to the Layout. And then I'll replace it with the application name that is stored in the configuration file. Go to the .env file and then change the app name to Laravel blog. Something went wrong. This is because I need to wrap the value with quotes since it contains a space. Okay, it worked as it was. And I'll add a link to this thing so that I can easily go back to the root route. Here, I can simply wrap the text with an anchor element like this. Okay, now I can easily go back to the home page from any page.